We're the Avengers. We can bust arms dealers all the livelong day, but that's the end game. How are you guys planning on beating that?
This is how you end, Tony.
Welcome back, everyone. Marvel just announced their Comic-Con panel. They were bringing back Robert Downey Jr. as a version of Doctor Doom in the next 2 Avengers movies. If it wasn't clear, they've changed Avengers 5 Kang Dynasty. Now it's going to be Avengers Doomsday, and his Doctor Doom will be the main villain of that, and he'll also return during Avengers 6 Secret Wars. Naturally, everyone had 1,000 questions about what this means for the overall story, why they're bringing him back as Doctor Doom, and not as, say, like Superior Iron Man when he's just available for him as a character. Why don't they just bring him back as the evil Iron Man of another universe? Then, just a few days after Marvel's announcement, all the trades published details on what's going on behind the scenes at Marvel with them bringing him back and bringing the Russos back to direct both Avengers movies. Marvel also revealed which movie they're going to debut his character in the first time we'll see his Doctor Doom, so I'll talk about that later in the video. So we'll break it all down. If you're brand new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the videos. Marvel has answered some of these questions, and I think we actually figured out what some of the story is going to be. Not 100%, but what most of the story is going to be. Everyone has probably seen the news by now from the Marvel Comic-Con panel. I did a much bigger reaction video with all the important parts of the Robert Downey Jr. Avengers Doomsday panel on Saturday night.
New mask. Same task.
The important parts of the announcement that Marvel left out of the panel is mostly which version of Doctor Doom he's playing. Like, what kind of character, what kind of version of Doctor Doom is he playing? Is he playing a Tony Stark who then later adopted the name of Doctor Doom? Is he a mind-swapped version of Tony Stark who just got stuck in Doctor Doom's body like Demon in an armor? In that version, Doctor Doom swaps his mind with Tony Stark's, taking over his body, but by the end of that story, Tony Stark, who's in Doctor Doom's body, defeats Doctor Doom in his body and essentially becomes a good version of Doctor Doom. He even makes Doctor Doom armor that looks like his classic red and yellow Iron Man colors. Neither of these is the case, though. Marvel is officially calling Robert Downey Jr.'s version Victor Von Doom, meaning that he's not a Tony Stark from another universe who then later just took the name Doctor Doom. In his original universe, whichever one that's going to be, his name has always been Victor Von Doom. It's not like he stole the name from someone else. A lot of people were quick to point out that this is kind of Romani erasure. Why would they cast Robert Downey Jr. to play a Romani character when they had so many other options like Superior Iron Man? I believe here's where Marvel's taking the same route they did with Elizabeth Olsen, Scarlet Witch, and both Evan Peters Quicksilver and Aaron Taylor Johnson Quicksilver. None of them had any Romani heritage in their blood. So I don't think that Marvel really cares about that aspect. Getting to the why of it all, like there are 3 or 4 major reasons why Marvel is bringing Robert Downey Jr. back. Just in general, most people are quick to point out money, like it's all about money, like there's backed up the dump truck of money to his house and said, please come back, we're floundering, we need to go with our safest bets.
You could not live with your own failure. Where did that bring you? Back to me.
How ironic, now that Robert Downey Jr. is coming back as the villain, like that would almost fit inside his mouth. They're not going to have him say that, obviously, that's just like too on the nose. But the first obvious reason, and everybody said this right after they made the announcement, like immediately upon making the announcement, is panic. Marvel hit the panic button. After the last few years of movies and shows since Avengers Endgame have been underperforming, they literally just made fun of this in Deadpool and Wolverine. I don't consider it a spoiler to say, like we can talk about it in a non-spoilery way. But the movie just in general absolutely rips the multiverse saga apart. Deadpool spends a lot of time in the movie making fun of all the Marvel movies since Avengers Endgame. There's even another character who's supposed to be really annoying during the movie that Deadpool hates, who says that he's loved all the Marvel movies since Avengers Endgame. Deadpool even breaks the fourth wall to say that everybody is tired of the multiverse of it all. Like the trope is just overdone. Can we just go back to the way things used to be? Just shining a light on a lot of the complaints that the audience members just in general have had since Avengers Endgame. Like, we're getting tired, this is getting long in the tooth, can you just move on to like the next big thing like X-Men? We want to see more X-Men stuff. Marvel's had a few hits since Avengers Endgame like Spider-Man No Way Home, I love the Shang-Chi movie, the Loki series. There have been other solid movies and shows just in general. Like, not every movie, every show has been terrible. There have been some good stuff in there. Generally though, Marvel Phase 4, Marvel Phase 5 have been a pretty mixed bag. I did a bunch of videos about this last year. Marvel had a big long dark night of the soul last year and just completely pumped the brakes on all the movies and shows, pulling way back on their output so they could focus way more time and resources on a smaller amount of stuff to make sure it was as peak as possible as they were releasing it. That's actually how Deadpool and Wolverine got moved up in the schedule. Originally, it wasn't supposed to release till later in the timeline, but they saw how good it was, so they're like, we need to get this out right now. And as of me posting this video, the movie's only been released for like 4 or 5 days. It's made about $500 million already, breaking all rated R movie records that are out there. There's actually a pretty good chance that it's going to break $1 billion by the time it ends its box office run. So it looks like Kevin Feige's master plan that he started enacting last year has begun to work. The other big part of this is Marvel panicking and trying to take the MCU back to what it looked like before Avengers Endgame. Like, oh crap, we need to roll the firmware back. Roll it back. This upgrade has been bad. Go back, go back. Now they're bringing back pretty much all the original Avengers in different ways, like some of them are going to have to be variants because some of them died. Really good example of that is Robert Downey Jr.'s Doctor Doom. And a lot of what they're doing here with Avengers Doomsday is to replace their original plan to use Kang the Conqueror and the Council of Kangs as the major villain of Avengers 5. I made a bunch of videos about this too after Marvel fired Jonathan Majors. During Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, that Kang called the Council of Kangs the Dynasty of Kangs, vowing his revenge against them. They spent all of the Loki series, Season 1 and Season 2, setting up the Council of Kangs and just the Kang character in general. Their original plan for Avengers 5 was to have the Council of Kangs come for the main 616 new Avengers team that would form the current roster of Avengers who are still alive, some new ones that we put together in the MCU. They would lose, but another more powerful character like the Beyonder, possibly another Kang variant calling himself the Beyonder, would surface, and they'd be like their Thanos of those two movies. So in essence, you have the same major villain for those two movies, but slightly different versions of that character. Like the Thanos that they defeated at the end of Avengers Endgame was a slightly different version of the Thanos that they tried to fight during Avengers Infinity War. So the whole idea is that they're trying to use the same type of villain for both movies because they're releasing the movies back to back essentially. That Kang variant kills the Council of Kangs, they push into Secret Wars, and it winds up being an adaptation of the original Secret Wars from the 1980s combined with a more modern version of Secret Wars, with all the remnants of characters from different universes surviving on Battleworld, forming a multiverse Avengers team with a bunch of legacy Marvel characters like Hugh Jackman's Wolverine, Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, more X-Men characters, fighting that different Kang variant, defeating him, then rebuilding the multiverse. If you've read the Secret Wars comics, the original version and the more modern version, it makes a little more sense. It's actually a pretty simple setup. It just trades on bringing a lot of classic actors back as variants like they did during Deadpool and Wolverine. But then Jonathan Majors had his very public legal problems. Regardless of where you fall on that, Disney basically ordered Kevin Feige and Marvel to fire him and come up with a new story that did not involve Kang. At their story retreat, the trades like Hollywood Reporter, Deadline, all these big publications reported that Marvel discussed replacing Kang as an overarching Thanos-type villain with Doctor Doom. And it actually sounds now like that plan ultimately won out inside Marvel, and that's what they did. And because they're still filming Avengers 5 and Avengers 6 back-to-back again, like they're still producing the next Avengers movies the same way they produced Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame, and we're getting really close to that. They're going to start filming Avengers 5 in spring next year, 2025. So they have to lock down all these actors and these characters in this story. We're kind of at the last minute here, and Marvel just has not done the work they need to do to develop Doctor Doom as a really important character inside the movies in general to get casual fans to care about him. They spent 10 years developing the Thanos character across all the movies, even the Avengers movies as well too. All these post-credit scenes. They can't turn on a dime, introduce a brand new actor in Avengers 5 that nobody has ever seen before, and expect casual audiences to care about him the same way that really hardcore comic book fans care about Doctor Doom. So how do they fix that problem? We need this new character that we want to bring in, but we need everybody, like anybody who's never ever picked up a comic book, to care about him. Their solution, and this is probably the safest bet that they could have gone with, we should have predicted that they would have done something like this, is for them to bring back the greatest actor in the MCU, their most popular character, and turn him into their new villain. Hoping that all the Robert Downey Jr. Iron Man stands out there, like the casual fans who've been clamoring for him to return to the MCU at some point, will buy into him as the villain in the same way. This is basically the safest, most bankable option for Avengers 5 and Avengers 6 which we should have expected them to do, like I said. Of course, they're going to pick the safest option. So much money is on the line. They're probably going to have to spend at least $600 million making both movies. They spent about $500 million making Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame. There were a bunch of strikes, so like everybody's contracts went up. Everybody's getting paid a little bit more. So it actually costs a little bit more to make the movies, even if you're doing the exact same thing. They also reported what Robert Downey Jr.'s contract is to come back. Part of the clauses of his contract is that he would only come back if they brought the Russos back to direct the movies, so that's the real reason why the Russos are coming back. They're also a really safe bet for Marvel just because Infinity War and Endgame did so well. They're like, why don't we just go back to the last thing we knew that worked really well? Marvel rolling back the firmware on their directors again. We need to go back to a more stable operating system. Robert Downey Jr. is being paid more than, I think, $80 million for both of the next Avengers movies, about $40 million per movie. He earned about $75 million for Infinity War and $75 million for Endgame. So his pay is about on par with what he got paid for the previous Avengers movies, with just a little bit of inflation figured in. There's all kinds of weird clauses that are built into his contract too, like the company jet. He gets this big base camp during the movies while they're filming because they'll be filming the movies back to back. But if you didn't see all the behind the scenes videos that I did for Infinity War and Endgame, he actually had all that stuff for Infinity War and Endgame. So really Marvel is just giving him all the perks that they gave him before. Like they're not new perks. He already had all these benefits before this. The Russos are being paid $80 million for both movies, so it's about $20 million per Russo brother per movie. Here's where we get to the new story for Avengers Doomsday. How do they explain Robert Downey Jr. being Victor Von Doom from another universe and not another Tony Stark? And why are they doing it that way? The answer why is a little bit easier. They're doing it mostly for the emotional impact of seeing how the 616 Marvel characters in Avengers who were Iron Man's friends and family react to seeing him again when he starts wrecking them and destroying their universe, being worse than Thanos. Their greatest friend and ally now become their greatest enemy. Somebody check on Peter Parker. Can you imagine how he's going to react when he sees this new version of Robert Downey Jr.'s character? Everybody was memeing the I hate you 3000 line, like I love you 3000 to I hate you 3000. Here's where we get to his big heel turn in the Marvel universe. According to Marvel, after the panel, they clarified he's always been Victor Von Doom in the universe that he's coming from. And it sounds like what they're doing for Avengers 5 Doomsday, because remember, both of these movies with Secret Wars are being filmed back to back, so it's like one story split across two movies, is they're doing Avengers Doomsday more like an adaptation of Time Runs Out.
As fans of the comic know, Secret Wars is incredibly ambitious. The magnitude of the filmmaking, the vastness of the storytelling, world-colliding epicness, all of this made Joe and I understand that we would need to make another essential movie first in order for all of us to be ready for Secret Wars.
Yep, there is one very, very important character that is required, the most important character in all of the Marvel universe.
With Doomsday!
In the comics, that's the story that leads up to Secret Wars, and Robert Downey Jr.'s version of Dr. Doom will be more like the one of that story, Raboom Alal, the Great Destroyer. Early theory is that in his universe, he was raised in Latveria by the Von Doom family. They might explain that he was born to Howard and Maria Stark, so that's why he looks like Tony Stark, but they were killed when he was a baby, like right when he was born, and he was adopted by the Von Dooms and raised as Victor Von Doom, so he only knows life as Victor Von Doom. That would explain why he has no memory of Howard Stark, Maria Stark, or a life as Tony Stark. Like, you have no connection to the Tony Stark character in general. They'll probably do it that way to explain why it's not some simple trick and why the main Avengers can't just fix things to make him good again. Like, he'll be evil no matter what. So it's not like a Hydra Cap kind of twist from the comics where there's this weird time travel explanation to explain how they turned a good character evil. He's always been this way in the universe that he came from. In his universe, like Dr. Doom of the comics, he combines magic and science to make himself even more powerful than both Iron Man and Doctor Strange. For example, he uses his power to probably destroy his own version of Thanos. That was the big twist in Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, is that the Illuminati wasted their version of Thanos. Imagine this Robert Downey Jr. Doctor Doom doing the same thing in his own universe. He's a version who wants to protect his universe, but he has no problem killing people, being more hardcore, kind of like Superior Iron Man. They kind of alluded to this phenomenon during Avengers Age of Ultron when for a hot second, Iron Man thought to cover the world in a metaphorical suit of armor to protect it. Like, I will protect the world, but in doing so, he would have wound up crushing everyone. I will crush your freedom in order to protect you. Imagine his Doctor Doom is more like that in his universe. They adapt a version of Time Runs Out and then Secret Wars from the comics, and we find out that his Doctor Doom is going around the multiverse destroying the anchor beings of each universe in order to prevent incursions into his own universe, which is kind of what happened in the original comics version, but I don't consider it a spoiler to say that in Deadpool and Wolverine, they introduced the concept of anchor beings in a similar twist to Molecule Man in the original Secret Wars storyline. I think they've replaced Molecule Man in the MCU with the idea of anchor beings. They explain in Deadpool and Wolverine when an anchor being dies, his universe winds up slowly dying too. Kevin Feige played coy on who the anchor being of the MCU is. It's not Wolverine, and it's not the Iron Man who died during Avengers Endgame. What I think they're doing, just based on all this information they've released, is the majority of the plot of Avengers 5 will be them pulling an Infinity War, but replacing the Vision and Thanos roles in the MCU being the anchor being in Robert Downey Jr.'s Doctor Doom. Like, his Doctor Doom will come to the MCU to destroy the anchor being to destroy the MCU universe in order to protect his own, preventing an incursion. And he's probably been going around the multiverse doing this to the different anchor beings all over the place. Secret Wars Doctor Doom did a version of this where he went around the multiverse, first killing the different Molecule Men, but then collecting them, trying to use them as a bomb against the Beyonders. I think they're just getting rid of the Beyonders part of the story. Like, just cut that out for their adaptation they're doing for the movies. The next real big question is when. When are we going to see his version of Doctor Doom for the first time? And reportedly, according to Variety, some of the trades, is actually going to be in the post-credit scene of the Fantastic Four movie. I don't know if that means that he's going to be the version of Doctor Doom from their universe. That would certainly be much simpler. But he could be from a totally different universe. In either way, they could just tack on the post-credit scene where they reveal what he is doing. So the side note here with the Kang of it all, big follow-up here, is that Marvel does plan to recast Kang so that they can wrap up that storyline with the Council of Kangs at the very beginning of Avengers 5. Now you're kind of realizing how this is going to go. It'll be kind of like the beginning of Avengers Infinity War, where Thanos came along and wrecked the Asgardians in the first 5 minutes of the movie and killed Loki. Do the same thing, but replace Thanos with this Robert Downey Jr. Doctor Doom and the Kangs. So RIP Council of Kangs. Then he'll come to the main MCU, start destroying it and the MCU anchor being to save his universe. Because they want to keep Robert Downey Jr.'s Doctor Doom as the main villain of Avengers 6 Secret Wars, this almost confirms that they're also turning him into a version of God Emperor Doom from the Secret Wars comics. Remember, their big task is getting casual audiences to care about the main villain of both movies. How do you do that? Well, you keep the same villain, you just introduce slight twists with the character, and they're doing it with their most popular character they've had in the MCU the last 10-15 years. So it kind of seems like the stories of both Avengers movies will more closely resemble the modern version of Secret Wars. I still think they plan to bring back a bunch of legacy Fox Marvel characters like X-Men, Hugh Jackman's Wolverine, Deadpool, Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, other X-Men, some other MCU characters, and they'll fight that God Emperor version of Robert Downey Jr.'s Doctor Doom in Secret Wars, then rebuild the multiverse at the end of that. Marvel also revealed that the new Fantastic Four will be in both Avengers movies, and Avengers 5 I think will primarily take place inside the main MCU, meaning at the end of their movie, they probably have a post-credit scene where they wind up in the MCU. I know there's going to be a billion more questions about this, so everybody just post your reactions in the comments below, and as we get more info on Robert Downey Jr.'s version of Doctor Doom and how they're figuring all of this out, of course I'll do more videos about it. I'm still working on a bunch of Comic-Con trailers like the Fantastic Four trailer, the new Captain America 4 trailer, the Thunderbolts trailer, so I'll post videos for those in the next couple of days too. Be sure to enable alerts for my channel so you don't miss any of that.